one of the things that I help people to do is get and understand their relationship with time. Because a lot of people are focused much too much on time. Time management is a huge topic for everyone.
My relationship with time's rocky right now, Penny. We might be breaking up. I'm not sure.
Right? But that's because you give it no attention. You don't really step back and say, I see you, I understand you, and I'm going to be smarter about the way that I work with you.
I need to buy some flowers on the way home.
Have that heart-to-heart with time.
Focus. Today's show is all about focus. And so I'm really excited about this topic because it comes up in so many different ways. Maybe it's focus around just getting my work done, or focus on all the noise that's coming at me, or the multiple priorities, or competing priorities. So to help us on this quest for better focus, my guest today is Penny Zenker. And Penny she goes by the term Focusologist, which I think is fantastic. She's an international speaker, business strategy coach, and best-selling author. And so I really love this conversation. We take it lots of different paths. We talk everything from how do we deal with our relationship with time, what does it really mean to have focus, to even going down the path of dealing with challenging situations like working in a matrix environment. So take lots of notes. I already have, and I'm going to share my notes with you at the very end.
The Workplace Therapist Show is sponsored by the Leadership Foundry. Bringing a cutting-edge, real-world approach to leadership development, the Leadership Foundry partners with each client organization to create a custom-tailored experience, virtual or in person, that combines innovative leadership content, world-class facilitators, and one-on-one coaching to ensure your leaders have everything they need to grow and thrive. To find out more and to design your one-of-a-kind program, visit myleadershipfoundry.com.
Penny, I'm really, really excited to have you on the show. So for folks that maybe aren't aware, I had the opportunity to come on your show a few months ago and really enjoyed that experience. And after we talked, I said, oh my gosh, Penny, I need to have you come on my show and help us with this thing that everybody listening's got a challenge with, focus. So before we dive into that fun topic, and I've got lots of questions for you, tell us a little bit more about what you do in kind of a day-to-day world to kind of bring focus to folks, and a little bit about how you even got there.
Well, I'm a focusologist, so
I think that's such a great title.
Perfect topic for today, right?
Focusologist.
Focusologist.
I mean, mixologist, focusologist. I mean, I love it.
Well, because I've come to the realization that focus is everything, and I don't just mean attention when I say focus.
Yeah.
Because that's what a lot of people think about is, oh, where am I going to put my attention? But focus is so much more and so much deeper, because if we think about aligning what we want, our strategies or our goals, with our intention and then our attention, right? So there's different levels of it that help us to align our actions, align our thinking. And so I kind of call Focusology the study of being able to control and direct the energy of our thought, our feelings, and our actions in order to get a meaningful, positive result. So I know it's a mouthful, but that's why, to me, it is so important that we step back and recognize, where are we focusing?
So I'm trying to catch up with my notes here.
I know.
That was so fantastic.
You asked me where did I come up with this, or how did I get here? Like many people, there's different pieces of the puzzles. Part of my puzzle started with, I was going to say, right back where I was in accounting and finance, which makes no understanding to how that fits into what I do today. Then I got into technology, and technology is one of those things that helps us to sort of automate things so that we can focus on the most important part of the process. So in a way, that's also focus, right? So that we can focus on the most important things for us to do and have the other things be done for us, and help us to work smarter, right? It's all about that. And then I got into coaching and into helping businesses to grow, and seeing where people might have the greatest strategy, but if they're not focusing on their culture and their people and the relationships, then they also don't have what they need from the big picture to be successful. Peter Drucker says that culture will eat strategy for breakfast every time, right? I love that.
Yeah.
So it's just throughout my career, I guess I've been looking at it through that lens. So it always seems to be about focus for me. Someone else might define that differently, right? You might have the same experiences, and with their personality and the way that they look at things, they might have come up with something different. But for me, it's always come back to this art of controlling and directing our focus, and
I just love it. I love so many different ways you said it. First, you had aligning attention and intention, which I thought was really great. But then you also had that, I think I caught it all, control and direct your energy, thoughts, feelings with action. Is it?
Right.
So this is beautiful. So I'm just going to throw out the biggest pain point that I'm hearing right now from all the folks that I talk to, and see if you can help with it. And then we can go down lots of paths with this idea of focus.
Do it.
But the biggest pain point I'm hearing right now is they say, how do I manage all the competing priorities that come at me at work? I'm sure you must have heard this 5 times today already. So this like priorities. How can we use focus to resolve some of those challenges?
Well, I think the thing is that one of the things that is great at directing our focus is asking quality questions. So nothing better, right? If you're in a sales discussion and you want to direct somebody's attention, you ask them a question that directs them in a certain direction. It puts their focus in a direction. Well, it's the same thing for us when we're evaluating something. So it's not possible that everything has the same priority, but we think that it does because we have the sense of urgency and we want to serve. And so all of a sudden, everything on our plate has the same level of urgency and the same level of priority, and therefore we get stuck because we're not able to make that determination.
Yeah.
So we have to step back and ask ourselves a better quality question.
What might be an example of a kind of question that we can ask ourselves or ask in a situation where we've got competing priorities?
Well, there's a couple of different tools that I use to do that. First of all, is we have to say, does this absolutely need to be done today by me? Right? So that's an urgency question to find out, is this really urgent?
Right.
And that helps us to weed out, because if we're really honest with ourselves, some of those things don't absolutely need to be done today. And some of those things don't need to be done by me. So there's an opportunity to delegate it to somebody else. I
had a client of mine probably about a month ago, and he gave me this little framework that I thought, oh, that's so simple and fun. And so I'll share it with you. He said, whenever something comes across his plate, he asks the 4 D questions. Do I need to do it? Do I need to delegate it? Do I need to delete it? Or do I need to delay it?
Right.
I don't know if you've heard those 4 before. I'd never heard those before.
I have. And that's a great framework too, right? That'll help you determine, when are you going to work on it and who's going to work on it. There's another one that I like to use, which is the urgent and important, the Eisenhower matrix.
Yep.
And this one, like I talked about the question or the way to find out whether it's urgent, right? Because that's part of the problem, is that we aren't sure how we balance urgency and importance.
Right.
So the other one can help us with importance a little bit, but also with the other. So, in those 4 quadrants, there's the things that are important but not urgent, which in my mind are absolutely the things to do first, because those are the things that get pushed off. Those are the things that never end up getting done. That's because they get crowded out by the urgent things.
Yep.
But if it's important, those things might be your relationships, like, not because it's burning and you have to put out the fire because, you haven't had a conversation with your spouse or haven't done a review with somebody in the whole year.
Right.
And they're frustrated because they're not getting feedback. If you put those important things and you schedule those and say, that's an absolute must for me to do this week, because of the value that it provides. So that would be in that quadrant. Then you've got the urgent and important things. And not all of those things need to be done by you. So that's an important thing to recognize. And then there's, the peripherals, the things that are sort of the little things that need to get done, and then those distractions that are in the way. And if you gave each one of those quadrants of value, so I would say that if you'd say, well, those things that are important but not urgent are actually $1,000 tasks. Because I like to look at things in value. That just helps me to regulate it, right? So those are $1,000 tasks. The things that are urgent and important, they're $100 tasks. Then your busy work is just $10 tasks, and there's zero for any of that sort of distraction.
Yeah.
And if you were to put your to-do list in that category, looking at your week and what you were going to work on first, and so this would give you a better way to evaluate it. So it's just another framework, and they all work. It's just a matter of which one works best for you. I was familiar with that framework, but I loved the nuance you put to it. I love the idea that you said do the high importance, low urgent first. And when you look at that framework, often the things that fall in that category are things like strategy and culture. Yes.
They're very, very important, never urgent, but they're very important. And then
they get pushed off.
And they get pushed off all the time. And then the high urgent, high importance, you said something really subtle, but so important. That doesn't mean I have to do it. No one said I had to be the one to do it.
Right.
But the majority of the people that I talk to, the leaders in the business, they love the hero complex. They love throwing on that cape and swooping in and being the one to solve it. But they don't necessarily need to be the one to do it. But they think in that moment they do. They need to be the one to rescue because it's high urgent, high important.
Well, and here's the thing, and you know this, right? And I'm sure even the people listening to it, they already know this, but we actually, when we do that and we want to be the hero, we're actually disempowering our team.
Yeah.
Because if we take away their ability to solve these problems themselves, we're taking away their ability to build up their confidence and their pride and their exertion of their authority, which is what creates drive for them, right? If we don't give them challenges and allow them to overcome those challenges, then they're going to kind of be in a more apathetic state, and you're not going to get their best creativity, and you're not going to get that level of ownership that you want people to have. Yeah.
So I love that. That's a great kind of opening for us to thinking a little bit about focus. What are some other, when you think about that nice big sandbox of focus, what are some other ideas that you're coaching your clients on that are helping them get more focused?
Well, one of the things that I help people to do is get and understand their relationship with time. Because a lot of people are focused much too much on time. Time management is a huge topic for everyone.
My relationship with time's rocky right now, Penny. We might be breaking up. I'm not sure.
Right? But that's because you give it no attention. You don't really step back and say, I see you, I understand you, and I'm going to be smarter about the way that I work with you.
I need to buy some flowers on the way home.
Have that heart to heart with time.
That's really good. So how do you start to mend that relationship or improve that relationship? What are some ways to do that?
Well, in my opinion, it's to shift the focus. Shift it away from time management and shift it towards performance management. Because that's what we want. We want to shift our focus towards the end result that we're looking to achieve. Because if we can achieve that in 2 tasks instead of 10 tasks, or in 10 minutes instead of an hour, then we should do that. Like an example is most organizations will go into and they run meetings for 60 minutes. Why? Just because there's a top of the hour and the clock goes around and it comes to the top of the hour. But there's no rule anywhere that says that you have to have 60-minute meetings. So what if you decided we're going to have 35-minute meetings or 40-minute meetings, and you're going to stop this nonsense of back-to-back meetings that keep everybody...
Sacrilegious. Microsoft Outlook's going to rebel if we do this, Penny.
So it's it's creating a heightened awareness as to what we're focusing on, and then challenging ourselves. Does this focus make sense? Is this focus getting us the result that we want to get? And then going back to focus on what the result is and how can we achieve that result by doing things in a different way. And I think the pandemic was in so many ways a beautiful shakeup for people to step back and look at things differently. It got them outside the box, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
It made us look at things differently. And I know companies who refuse to let people work at home because fear-based management says, focused on, I have to see my employees at their desk in order to get the best out of them. Now they realize that actually that's not true.
Right. Yeah, interesting. Okay. So I love that idea of kind of focusing more on results. And you talked about meetings. Is there any other examples that might make that also come alive a little bit more?
Anything, right? You talk a lot about relationships.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how that simple focus on the outcome can improve your relationships.
Okay.
So I'll give an example.
Okay.
If I may. So a little story, I was working on this highly important strategic project I was working in Zurich, Switzerland. I was CEO of this direct marketing company. And we just got this massive deal. And the software provider was in Boston. And they looked amazing. And we did our due diligence and everything was going great. But when we started to implement it for this client, we hit some really rocky roads. Like the deliveries were subpar, and there were a lot of mistakes that were happening along the project. And my team was really mad and really frustrated because they really thought that this group was going to deliver better results. They felt like they weren't giving us the attention. We heard that they were being bought out at that time. So they were like, oh, so we're not important. This deal isn't important. Lots of assumptions that were going on, right? And so assumptions can really put a thorn in our relationship side. And the way I approached it and how I helped the team and how I brought us back together from that disjunction point is it's giving people the benefit of the doubt. Right? It's coming at it from a positive intention, that people have positive intentions, but sometimes there's difficulty in communication. Something here was falling down. And so I was able to help my team to calm down, to say, let's find out first what's going on. Let's not make these assumptions that they're too busy in this other project. And let's ask more questions. And let's really focus on the result that we want to get with this organization, as opposed to focusing on the problems or the mistakes. Because when we focus on the problem gets bigger.
Yeah.
And then there's more toxicity that keeps us apart. And so when we focus on the outcome, what that does is it helps to bring us together to find a solution. And so that was me, really leading the team to come back and getting that. So we did a workshop to find out together what's working and what's not working in this relationship, and what are some of the constructive things that we could do to mitigate some of the challenges that we're having. And they weren't that major. It's just that this company wasn't doing some of the testing that needed to be done. And so they didn't realize that there was a problem, as big as we were seeing it, because we were on the other side. So once you break that down, and you're focused on the outcome, you're going to much, much quicker come to the result. And
you make a really important point too, because if we stay focused on the problem, it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and aggravate us more and more and more. Exactly. Rather than just shifting it to the outcome and say, okay, how do we get there? What are the steps we need to do to get there? So you mentioned,
wouldn't it be nice if we did that in politics?
Oh, wouldn't it be? Wouldn't it be? We can dream. We can always dream, Penny.
Because focusing on the problem is exactly what we're seeing in our society, and it's creating greater polarization.
Yeah,
at least that's my opinion.
No, I agree with you completely. I think it gets a little more complicated because I think the media likes us to focus on the problem because that sells a lot more eyeballs, right? It's more salacious because problems are scary. Like you just did that, you did that. And we always like to see what's looming around the corner. You mentioned something earlier, and I want to kind of dive into it a little bit deeper. You used the word ownership. Tell us a little about how ownership, what that means to you, and is there something around ownership or even role clarity that might help with focus? Because I had a client this week, and they said, the biggest thing right now for us is, we're in this, we don't really know who's making the decision, and I'm in this kind of matrix world, and it's kind of messy, and blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if ownership can solve that, but I would love to get your perspective on it.
Sure. Well, I'm writing a new book around ownership, and been thinking a lot about it. And because a lot of people that were coming to me and saying we have an accountability issue in our company, and help us, make people more accountable. This new generation, they're lazy, they're not accountable, which they say, by the way, about every generation. And I guess, in terms of matrices, right? It's where things are blurred. How do you know what people are accountable for in a matrix unless you're being very clear and specific about things? But what I want to say there is the difference of focus is if we focus on the accountability side, then in my opinion, we usually are thinking about the consequences. What happens when things go wrong? And that's when we come up with, how do we hold people accountable when they're not going to do the things they're supposed to do? So there's kind of like a forward assumption that people aren't going to do what they're supposed to do, right? So we're almost bringing that they're almost bringing that to fruition. So in order to shift our focus and the energy to be more positive energy and to support the team and the leadership and the actual getting to the result, if we focus on ownership, that's usually in the beginning of the process. So instead of waiting until something isn't done or isn't followed through or focusing on that consequence, what if we focus on how we can ensure that somebody takes ownership and sees it as theirs and wants it to be theirs and is willing to go above and beyond when necessary? And so if they're not sure whether it's their responsibility or not, that they take it anyway, right? You want that person, this is just an example, if there's a piece of paper on the floor, regardless of whether you put it there or not, that you pick it up, right? And so if you see something that needs to be done and it's not in your area, how do you make sure it gets done? You communicate with somebody, or you take responsibility. And you mentioned earlier about clarity of roles. Well, isn't that, if you can clarify the roles, isn't that the beginning of the process? Yeah,
that's right.
So people do need to have clear expectations of what's expected of them in this role. So clarity of roles is huge. And also giving people some leadway to go and color outside the lines. So meaning that if there is something that overlaps with them, that they're not afraid to step in and take responsibility and doesn't go, not my job, right? Because that leads to the accountability issue. So if leaders come from that ownership perspective, what needs to be done in the beginning of the process in order to have people understand the why, the bigger picture of what is the outcome and how we think that we could get to there, but give them some flexibility in getting there, and what their role is and what other people's roles are. And, and then also just engaging them and trusting them and giving them authority to actually conduct their role. Sometimes we give people responsibility, but not authority.
Right. Oh, so I think that's another issue around the matrix that is a fundamental problem, at least for my clients this week, is that they are been assigned accountability, for lack of a better word, maybe responsibility for metrics, but no authority with the people that actually move those metrics. So they find themselves, these senior leaders trying to influence these country leaders to make these changes, and the country leaders just go, no, I don't want to do it.
Right.
But the senior leader's the one who's ultimately going to be left holding the check. They're the one who's held accountable for the P&L for those countries.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about kind of that the authority responsibility dynamic? How do we navigate that?
Well, so let me make sure I understand your situation. So you have and this is for all sorts of organizations, right? You have a country leader who's responsible for the P&L of that country, right? And then you have somebody responsible for a project that also needs to be done in that country, but doesn't have the authority to get resources to do it. Is that what you're saying? Kind of like that?
Sort of, but I would make it, overly simplify it this way. I would say you've got the country leader who basically can make the decisions on what's happening in her or his country. Mm-hmm. And then you have a leader above them that is a dotted line that is going to be held accountable for the profit and loss for that country.
Oh, gotcha.
And they might see that they're losing revenue, or they might see their costs are inflated, and they're trying to get that country leader to do the steps to change the P&L. When the country leader doesn't want to do those steps, and because it's dotted line, they can just say, "Nah, I'm not going to do it." So that senior leader's held accountable, but has no control over the levers.
Gotcha. Well, that's interesting. The first thing that comes to mind in that is that it's almost like in a military situation. You have somebody who's calling the strategy and telling people what to do, for their safety and for the mission, and the others have to do it, and they call it on the spot. When something happens and there's pressure, they have to call whether we're going to go through this way or whether we're going to do something else. So it's somewhat similar to that. And I think that's the way it should be. So that person who's accountable at the top, their job, at least this is the way that my boss taught me something that I think plays a huge role, is it's in that country's best interest to also get the P&L. So it's not like they're working against each other.
Yep.
So the question is how do they better work together? And my boss, I walked into his room one time, and I used to go in like frustrated and upset, with whatever was going on. And I would walk out like motivated and empowered and driven. And I thought, oh my God, what does this guy know about me and how to motivate me? And I asked him one time, because I needed to know. I said, Peter, I need to know how you know me so well. I mean, are you like, doing some kind of voodoo inside, you got your little penny doll and but he said the typical, I can't motivate you, only you can motivate you. But he said something after that I think is relevant here too. And he said, my job is to remove the obstacles that keep you from your motivation. So I challenge leaders to challenge, in this case, it would be to challenge that country and find out what's in the way. And it might come down to, we're used to a lot of these organizational structures is you need to do this because, this is coming down from above. But we need to be more creative in how we support our people because they want the same thing. In any negotiation, that's one of the first things that you come to is you keep chunking up until you find that common thing that's the same.
Yeah.
And then you could say this is focus again, right? Is where do we put our focus? Not on the thing that we're against, but the thing at the top that we have in common. And then we figure out from this common goal in this common place, how we come to an agreement and an understanding of how things need to change for both sides.
Beautiful. I just think you fixed that matrix problem. I've always found matrix to be so messy because they just, in theory, they sound so good, but they require a lot of alignment work. But you really just gave a nice practical way to do that, which is so beautiful.
I don't know that I fixed it, but I gave a suggestion that I think that it's the way the organization is looking at it, and that leader might be looking at it, that just needs a shift in perspective, a shift in focus.
So Penny, I ask all my guests this question. What is one life hack you have for us that can help us to either improve our relationships or our conversations, either at home or at work?
So I think it'd come back to sort of a similar theme of what I'm saying here, or what I said earlier, is to assume positive intent. is if you assume positive intent, that even if somebody, and people can say, oh, that's easy for you to say, but I was able to create a really positive divorce situation under very difficult circumstances, because even under that difficult time, I assumed positive intent. The intent wasn't to personally hurt me. It may have happened that way, and I may have felt hurt, but that wasn't the intent. So if I can separate what happened from the intent and say, okay, how can I look at the person in the situation from a place of what happened, like more of curiosity, and coming, again, assume positive intent and then focus on the outcome that you want. Now, we had 2 children together, so it was easy to say, what's the best choices that I can make that are going to be supportive for my children, that are going to show them what a positive breakup can look like, because breakups happen, and it's the same thing in our work environment, right? Is we have to be the example as the leader. So we have to create that culture of assuming positive intent so that we can focus on the outcome.
That's beautiful. I love that. I think that's so good. And I think that assume positive intent is such a great mantra that we all can hold on to. And
it'll improve every single relationship that we have, guaranteed.
Yeah. And you've been really consistent today in reminding us and guiding us and steering us away from looking at the negative of things, the problem of things, the brokenness of things, and look at the outcome that you want and direct your energy there, because where you direct your energy is likely what you're going to end up getting. So thank you for that. So if people want to learn more about you, follow you, buy a copy of your book, where can they go?
They can go to pennysKeynote.com.
Great.
And that's it.
Okay.
All the stuff that you need about me is right there.
One-stop shop, pennysKeynote.com. That's great. Well, Penny, this was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your wisdom and guidance. I and we really, really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was really fun.
So I don't think I could probably get enough focus in my life. I mean, I'm always looking for more. I think we probably all are. So I've got lots of notes here from my conversation with Penny. So here were some of the highlights of what I heard. First, I loved her ways that she defined focus. She said it's aligning attention and intention. Isn't that cool? Attention and intention. We're trying to control and direct our energy, our thoughts, our feelings, and move those ultimately towards action. I thought that was also very, very cool. And so I said, well, where do you start with this? And she said, the first way is you want to ask good quality questions. Like, when does this have to be done? Who's going to do it? We talked about the 4 Ds of do it, delegate it, delay it, or delete it. We talked about those. And then she went into that urgent versus important matrix. I'm really familiar with this matrix. You probably are too. But she had a couple subtleties in there that I thought were really, really cool. So the first one was, she said, the one you want to focus on is not the urgent and important one. It's the low urgent, high important one. That one we often don't focus on, and it gets overlooked and pushed to the side. But that's where the real value is. That's stuff like strategy and culture. Like, we need to start on that one. She said, that's your $1,000 item. Your $100 item is the urgent and important. And the reminder she gave us was, just because it's urgent and important doesn't mean you have to be the one to do it. You might need to delegate that to somebody. And if you're always putting the cape on and doing it, you're kind of holding your team back on that one. Then we pivoted and talked about our relationship with time. And she said, it's really important that we move from kind of just thinking about how we use time to the result we're trying to get. What's our result here? And the example that she gave was the common one we can all relate to, meetings that are exactly 1 hour long. Why? A meeting doesn't need to be an hour long every time. It could be 35 minutes or 17 minutes. Why do we always have to go into Outlook and make it 1 hour? She said, really think about what needs to get done and how much time do you need to do that. We talked about ownership and we talked about kind of the importance of that. And I love the distinction she gave from ownership and accountability. She said, when we do accountability, we're almost painting a picture of, well, when this person screws up, how am I going to hold them accountable, right? We're almost envisioning a failure. Whereas when we say ownership, right out of the gate, we're kind of giving people, we're trusting them, we're empowering them, and we're trying to clear things out of the way. I thought that was beautiful. And then she kind of ended her time by talking about, What we're really trying to do in almost all these situations is we're removing obstacles so we can keep people motivated. And then her life hack really summed it all up when she said, you really want to try to assume positive intent. Look for the positive outcome in all these situations and align your time and your effort to those. Spend less time focusing on problems and more time focusing on the outcome that you want. So all great takeaways, many things that I want to try and put in play tomorrow, but I should probably only pick one because after all, I'm trying to be focused. So hopefully you found your one in there that you want to take and put in play, and I look forward to hearing how it goes.
Thanks so much for listening to the Workplace Therapist Show. And for all of you who've helped us out by writing a review, thanks so much. If you haven't written a review, I'd love it if you would just take a few minutes of your time and head over to iTunes or wherever it is you listen to your podcast and write a few comments. It really helps us grow our listening audience and grow our tribe. We're on a mission to make the workplace a better place, and we need your help to do it, so help us out. I'm going to share one and this comes from our great friend Jamie Turner, who wrote, I read all the required books on leadership, and I've studied all the big research papers on it too. But when I want someone to distill all the academic mumbo-jumbo into actionable stuff, I listen to the Brandan Smith podcast. He provides science-based information in a warm, fun, and engaging way. It's my go-to podcast for great career, leadership, and work advice. Thanks so much, Jamie. And thanks to all of you who listen and who share this with your friends and family and coworkers. And if you'll just take this time to put in those comments, we appreciate it even more. Thanks, y'all.